Hey everyone, and welcome to the Jack of All Trades podcast. I'm your host, Kaylee Musso, and if you missed last episode, make sure you go tune in because it was a guest episode. We were joined for a second time by our very own podcast editor, Aiden O'Farrell. So go tune into that one. But today, I figured that I would dive into the world of live broadcasting because it's a topic that not tons of people are familiar with. And, if you're watching a live stream of, let's say, a concert, or you're watching the Super Bowl or the World Cup or the Olympics or anything that's a live stream and you're watching it, somebody is behind the scenes directing that. And I've had the opportunity to do things like that, not obviously on that scale, but during my time at my college, that is my major. So video and film production is my major. And I'm about to graduate, which is crazy. But I wanted to give you guys kind of a behind the scenes look at what I've gotten to do and kind of my journey as a director. I did an episode where I talked about producing, like everything that goes into producing a sports broadcast. That is something that I've done as well, but I didn't really talk about directing. So I feel like I should start by explaining what a director actually does because it's different from a producer. So producing, and if you haven't listened to that episode, make sure you go listen. It's very informative. So producing controls kind of the content and timing of the show. The director controls the look of the show. So the director is the one choosing camera angles, calling for camera angles, calling for specific shots. And the director sits right next to a technical director, and the technical director is the one physically pressing the buttons to switch between camera angles, to put different transitions and wipes on the screen, different graphics on the screen sometimes. That's the technical director. So as the director, you're giving commands to someone else, and that someone else is carrying out those commands. Sometimes those roles are combined in a smaller situation. Sometimes the director is also the technical director. So that just depends. I've never had to do that, thankfully, but that does happen. I do want to give a disclaimer before I dive too deep into this and just remind you that this is all my experience at my college. And yes, we have a mobile production truck that is state of the art. We have a TV studio. We have wonderful equipment and access to amazing things. However, this is just my experience. And when you go out into the broader industry of the world, things sometimes might be a little bit different depending on the scale of the thing that you're doing. So some of the responsibilities that I've had as the director aren't necessarily always 100% set in stone, reflecting what a director would have to do. Let's say, directing the NFL or the, basketball, like professional basketball or something else, the Grammys, like, you get what I'm saying, right? Okay. So with that said, let's talk about briefly what a director does, other than, I know I said controlling the look of the show, but that takes a lot of preparation. And so if you're directing something, you need to know, first of all, what is going on. And that sounds obvious, and yes, it's possible to direct something that you've never directed before and it's maybe a new thing and you're not really sure what to expect. Yes, that's possible. However, usually when you're directing something, you have a very clear idea of what needs to happen when, and that's also why you meet with your producer usually, because your producer should have show rundowns and all of that. And you need to know when to call for certain things. So you need to have an idea of what's going to happen, right? So as the director, you're also in charge of making a camera plot, making decisions about where you want your cameras to be, how many cameras you're using, whether it's a handheld camera, a camera on a tripod, maybe you're going to use a jib camera, maybe you're going to use a steady cam, a gimbal, like what do you have access to, where can you put certain cameras? And that's where you would also work with operations, engineering, some of those departments to figure out what's possible. So if you want a camera in a certain place, you ask for that. And if it's possible, they'll figure it out and get it done. And if it's not, they'll let you know and you reassess. So you make the camera plot, you decide what you want where, what you want for coverage. And that takes a lot of thinking too, because you need to think about what action is happening, where's the action happening, and how do I want that to look on camera? So where do I need to put these cameras in order to make sure that I have coverage of everything that I want to see during this broadcast? So That's important. One thing that we also do, at least here at NESCOM, as the director, you're responsible for filling out a production manual. And that has everything from on-site contacts to the routing for EVS, which is like our replay and stuff. So what specific camera angles do I want as the primary angles to go to, so you have to fill out a bunch of things. You'll make like a packing list. What's all of the gear that we're going to need when we actually load up on broadcast day? What's the production schedule? When is the call time? When are we breaking for dinner? Things like that. Now, sometimes the director does that. Sometimes other people in other roles help out, like operations. Operations might go in and help work on the schedule or other things. Crew assignments, that is also something that I've done as the director, but I've also done that as the producer, as the kind of just crew manager. So that is something that at NESCOM, who specifically does that kind of changes sometimes. But yeah, so sometimes you might be doing crewing, which is basically you sometimes have to recruit a crew, or sometimes in our case here, people are taking classes and they're assigned to work specific events for that class. So you take who you're given or you recruit people and then you put them in certain positions based on their ability level. If someone is really good at a handheld camera and someone else is not, then you probably want to assign them accordingly. But then also their schedules, because as students, if you have a class schedule and we're supposed to be, setting up or starting filming at this time, but they get out of a class at this time, you kind of have to work around that. So sometimes crewing can be a bit of a nightmare, a bit of a headache, but it's all just part of it. That's the main role of the director, kind of pre-production wise. Obviously, depending on what the show is, there might be more prep than that. Like if I'm directing the night show performance series, which we'll get into later, but it's musical performances and interviews. So sometimes I go in and make cue sheets for each song that they perform. When does the main vocal come in? When is there a drum solo? That type of thing, so that I can try and get it on camera. I have like a producer read those cues out to me, kind of time it as we're going through. So sometimes there's things like that. And just watching footage, watching content, getting prepared, getting familiar with the pacing. And, you can look at other directors' work of the same type of thing and see, oh, what did they call for? So that's something that I like to do as well. Directing can be stressful. Directing can be very fast-paced, especially if things are going wrong. Directing can be stressful, or if your camera operators are inexperienced, that makes directing really, really tough because you have to try and guide them into what to do and what shots to get while also controlling what everyone at home is seeing on that program screen. And you don't want to miss any action or linger too long, but you're also trying to guide your other camera operators to get what you need. And that's what makes it really difficult. In the real world, I guess you could say, most of the time, if you're directing something, your camera operators are going to be more experienced. And so, especially in certain crews, maybe those camera people have been doing it for a decade and they know exactly what you need. And so that's when it becomes a lot easier. So I guess the one thing about me having to direct really inexperienced camera crews sometimes is that it's only serving to better my skill set, because if you can direct a really inexperienced camera crew, then when it comes time to direct and you actually have a really good camera crew, it's like, wow, this is going so well. You can just do so much more and you can focus on just making the show better rather than just getting through it. You can thrive and not just survive, if you will. So, but with that being said, how did I get into directing? How did I start directing? As some of you know, if you've listened to other episodes, when I first came to this college, I knew my major was video and film production, but I didn't know exactly where I wanted to go with that. When I had toured the college, I knew that I thought I knew that I did not want to do the live production aspect, because with my major, you also learn commercial production and narrative film. That would be like making movies and short films and such. You learn like news gathering type of thing, all kinds of stuff. And I was like, oh, live production, that's like the one thing I definitely don't want to do. And then I took the class that everyone in the major is required to take, and it's called Studio One. Everyone has to take that. It's a very hard class. especially if you're focused on narrative filmmaking or if you're not a student that usually takes initiative with stuff. So it's a very hard class. It's a 3-hour class. Most of our classes in our major are 3-hour once a week classes, which blows some people's minds, but we're used to it. It's at 9 in the morning. It's information overload. And I think ours was on Monday morning. So Monday morning, first thing, information overload for several hours. It's complicated, it's technical, it's not enjoyable to some people, or to a fair amount of people, I would say. However, once you really get into it and you start working events and you start just kind of getting a feel for actually applying the skills that you've been, lectured on or whatever the first half of the semester, it starts to kind of click. And for me, I was very challenged by that class, but I think I learned to love it in a weird way. It was like, oh, that was really hard. Let's do it again, type of thing. And the more I got into live production versus narrative film, the more I realized that I didn't like narrative filmmaking. I didn't like all of the hassle of setting up tons and tons of gear and getting everything just a certain way to film 2 shots and then that's it. You did all that work for that, or you did all that work and then you still have to do all of the editing afterwards, and also you just have to plan the film storyline itself, and just it's so much work. But to me it's not rewarding, because it's like I'm just doing all this work to then just show this video and be done with it because I don't want to use it in the future. Like I quickly came to realize that that was not my thing, but live production was, because it was difficult and challenging and fast paced, but it was such a rewarding feeling when you're done with it. And it's like, wow, we just did that. And now I don't have to think about it until the next one. Like, it is so rewarding. And yeah, it just, narrative film challenged me in a way that made me hate it and made me, well, not, okay, hate's a strong word, but made me not want to do it. And live production challenged me in a way that made me want to push myself and learn more and do more. So I was starting to get into live production anyways. And so I took my Studio One class in, I think it was the spring semester of 2024. So I had done my first year of college somewhere else, and then I transferred in. And my first semester, I didn't take the studio class. So this was my second semester at my college. And I was very interested in taking advantage of the resources I had available to me. So a couple of the seniors at the time that had taken a couple live broadcast classes, and they were kind of looking to go into that for their career. And so they would be filling the kind of higher roles in anything that we did. We, as Studio One, mostly what you do during events is run a camera, and you need other students or staff or whoever to fill kind of those other production roles. So they were doing that, but I was really, really interested, and I was just trying to learn as much as I could and ask them questions, and I would shadow, and my initiative and work ethic was recognized. And so I was given a lot more freedom to shadow positions and, try all these different things, instead of, some of the students that just didn't care at all about the class or just didn't like it. And so they weren't trying very hard, but I was taking every opportunity, like, hey, can you show me how to set up these monitors? Or can you, because I knew that since I was discovering I wanted to do this, that was going to be me in a semester or two. And I wanted to prepare while I had people to show me. So I was doing that. And we had this thing called the locker room, or it might have been newscasts at the time. I don't remember, but it's something that the sports journalism students do. It's like a news report, or like a sports sort of talk show, or calling a game, or it's just basically for them to practice their skills and build up, an on-camera portfolio. And you partner with the video students that are in Studio One and sometimes Studio Two if it's running. And together, you, in the studio and in master control, you create this final taping, basically. And it's not live broadcasted, but it's what we call live to tape, which means you can restart or refilm things if you need to. It will air live somewhere eventually, but while you're actually filming it, it's not live. Anyway, so we had just finished up, it's like 4 Fridays in a row that you do this. And so we had just finished up the last one, and the instructor, Jeff Hope, he wanted to film something with a few of his seniors that was then going to be played at the senior night, NESCOM senior night. So that needed someone to direct it as well. And it was another student that was directing it. Because if there's students that are interested, of course, they're encouraged to try it. And so that's something that's really nice about the program, is that you get hands-on experience with roles that you wouldn't get to just jump right into in the bigger industry. So I was sitting in master control with one of the seniors, kind of shadowing her, and Jeff Hope came in, and then I think one of the two seniors that I was just talking about was like, "Oh, you should try directing." And I was like, "Me? Like, why? Why?" It wasn't even on my radar as something that I could do or wanted to do or should do. I don't know. I was like, "What do you mean I should direct it?" Like, okay, I guess. Like, so I went in, they filmed it a couple times because, like I said, it was live to tape, and they did it a couple times to try and get it the best that it could be. So I basically shadowed the student that was directing it for the first 2 run-throughs, and then I directed the third run through, and I did have like a cue sheet of, kind of what to call for and whatnot. So I did it, and that ended up being the take that they used, and I was like, whoa, that was so stressful. I was so stressed. It was my first time. I was kind of thrown into it. It wasn't even on my radar until 10 minutes prior. Like, "Oh yeah, you should go direct this. Like, you'd be great." And so I guess maybe I owe it all to that moment of them seeing something in me that I didn't even see, because I don't know if it weren't for that and them kind of suggesting that I go do that, I probably wouldn't be at all where I am today. I might not have even ever tried directing. I probably would have eventually, but this way it got me into it like really early. So I was like, okay, that was really stressful, but you know what? I kind of want to do it again. Which, how does that make sense, But the instructors for our Studio One class were not actually there at the time because, enough people that knew what they were doing were there that could be trusted to get it done. But they heard about it because the student that was directing it before sent an email just telling me, like, great job at directing it and whatever, and she CC'd the instructors. And they heard that I did a great job directing it, and so they sent me an email saying, "Here's the list of fusions commands, save it for Monday." And I was like, oh, this is getting serious. So fusions was something that we did in Studio One and Studio Two a little bit, but it's basically this pastor that comes in and he does these little 1 minute things where he gives kind of like a spiritual lesson and he quotes a verse, and it's something that goes on the radio, I think, but there is also a video component to it, and he cranks through a bunch. You try and get through like 20 or something in the few hours that you have, but it's also just for students to apply the practical skills that they're learning. And it's Studio One, and it's complicated stuff, so there's a lot of mess ups, and there's a lot of like starting over and starting over and starting over, and so it's kind of crazy. But yeah, so it's basically just a way for students to get experience, but it also benefits, whatever the radio station that it is for. So anyway, fusions. They were like, "You're going to direct fusions on Monday." So I had a cue sheet, and by cue sheet, it literally was exactly like what I needed to call for, like standby bars and tone and slate, take bars, tone and slate, stand by to lose it, ready, camera, blah, 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 mic, So I could basically read off of that, which was really helpful to start out with. And I was supposed to be working all the other roles like the rest of the students in the class, but they pulled me from the rotation so I could direct it, which was crazy. And so I directed some of them, and then they were like, "Okay, I'm taking this cue sheet away from you. You don't need it." And I panicked for a second, like, "What? Like, I need to look at that. I need to know what to call for." And they're like, "No, you don't. Like, you're doing fine. You're doing it. You got it. Just trust your instincts. Like, you'll be fine. You don't need this." So they took it away. And then I was just calling it just by fully watching the monitors and like thinking it through, paying attention to what I needed to call for next. And I got through it. And again, I was like, wow, that was so stressful. Let me do it again. So that was like the second thing I ever directed. And if I remember right, I think I have my timeline straight, but it all kind of does blur together. But I think that was the only thing I directed that semester because it was kind of, we were wrapping up the semester anyways. But when I took Studio 2, which was like the next level of that class, which isn't always offered, it's only if there's enough interested students. But Studio 2 ran in the fall semester of 2024. So I took that with 7 other students, and they were assigning roles for, okay, we have volleyball, we have a football broadcast, we have a basketball broadcast, like assigning different roles. And they were like, for volleyball, does anyone want to direct? Like, is anyone interested in directing it? And at first nobody really was. And then I was like, you know what? I should try it. Like that thought even terrified me of just volunteering for that. But I was like, I should challenge myself. I should try it. I can prepare. I can do as much as I possibly can to get ready, and I'll do it. So I said, hey, I'll direct volleyball. And then of course, as soon as I said that, then there was another student that she was like, oh yeah, actually I want to direct it too. And for context, me and this girl did not have the best relationship because she was actually pretty nasty and would go and talk behind my back and other people's back, but even right in front of them, like to other people, like whispering it and stuff. She was not nice, but she was very sweetsy to people and was used to getting her way. And so this became a running problem throughout the semester. Anytime I wanted to do a certain role, suddenly she wanted to do it and would push to get her way, even though my work ethic and dedication was like way better than hers. I don't know. It was a whole thing. But anyway, so she wanted to direct volleyball too. So we were doing a practice one the night before for a match that they had where we were treating it like it was live, but we weren't live streaming it. And then the next day we were actually going to live stream it. So how it was left was I would direct the Friday night practice one, like all 5 sets during that one. And then the first set of Saturday. And then she would take over after that, which was fine. But that means most of the actual live broadcast was directed by her. And when she took over, everyone afterwards, like camera operators, were telling me that they wished I had still directed, which I didn't think I did an amazing job, but I don't know. It's a hard sport to direct. It's very fast paced and the ball is unpredictable. I mean, volleyball, I guess if you really, really know the sport, you can start predicting some patterns, but in general, it's very fast paced and unpredictable. So that was an interesting one to direct. That was my first time directing sports. That was my first time directing anything other than what I had previously mentioned. So it was a big deal for me. And I spent a lot of time trying to watch other volleyball broadcasts and see kind of what they did. Like I was really stressed and I did as much prep as possible, but it went okay. But then I was called to the office of one of my instructors, and we had this thing called the Night Show with Danny Cashman, and it had been going on for over a decade. And it was another live to tape event where, the actual night that we were filming it, it wasn't being aired live. However, eventually, once it got all edited together, it went out on TV. So think of, The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, but the smaller scale version in Maine. Maine's only late night talk show, It was the whole thing. I mean, a live audience came in and it was filmed in the Gracie Theater. Like it was filmed in a big theater. And there was a live audience, and the host, Dan Cashman, he came out, he did a monologue, he went to his desk. We had like a whole set, desk, couch, there was like a second kind of host person as well. There was a whole band, like a live band. They came in every show, and then there were guests, and they would come in and be interviewed. And sometimes if they were a musical guest, they would give performances. Or we had all kinds of guests like Mr. Drew and his Animals too, or different things. So, sports coaches, all kinds of different things. And so anyway, that was a show that we, a couple times a semester, would have a filming day for, and they would film content worth several episodes, several different episodes in one night. So we'd usually film 2 or 3 shows in one night. And it's a long day, especially for the audio students, because they get there at like 8 a.m. And then by the time you wrap up, it's very late into the evening because we don't start filming until like 6 or 6:30 maybe. So yeah, anyways, it's a very long day. And it's kind of stressful to direct because you have to make sure you catch, the entrance through the doors and then cut to this person, then cut to this person and not miss this. And then it's like kind of has a format that you have to follow. And then when the guest comes out, and then you have to get the handshake and get them sitting down, and the camera operators have to get to their framing quickly and all of this stuff. And there's just a lot that goes into it, and you need to know ahead of time, okay, they're going to have a prop and I need to show that on this camera or whatever. There's just a lot that goes into it. And it's always Studio One students that are running the cameras. And usually they're nervous or they're not super experienced yet, or there's just a lot of guidance that needs to happen. So all things considered, it's pretty stressful. Anyways, I was called to my instructor's office on a Tuesday, and night show was always filmed on Wednesday. I was called to his office on a Tuesday, and he said, okay, I have a question for you. The student that was going to direct the night show tomorrow is sick and is unable to, and the other student director is away for a sports game. I want to offer it to you because, you're kind of the next person on the list and like you've shown interest and potential, and I want to offer you that you can direct it. You can direct as much or as little as you want, like, and I'll be right there and I'll help you out, all of that, but I want to give you the opportunity. And so I was like, oh boy, like, what am I signing up for? But I agreed because why not? I agreed. But the thing is, I was actually kind of sick too. Like, I was really not feeling good, and I had less than 24 hours to prepare because call time was 1 p.m. the next day, and I hadn't been at the production meeting. I hadn't I didn't do all the usual steps that you would do to prepare for this. So I was so nervous. And so I also, just because I was also kind of sick too, I was like just not feeling good and the whole 9 yards. But anyway, so I did get through it. I was helped out a lot by my instructor. He even wrote on the rundowns like specific camera angles, and sometimes I think he probably stepped in to help make calls, but for the most part I directed the whole thing. And that was like my first night show that I directed, and it was like, wow, I proved to myself that I can do it. It was really stressful and it was very last minute, but you know what? I'm proud of myself because ever since I took Studio One and started directing a little bit, like the fusions and stuff, I had a goal of mine. I was like, I want to eventually direct a night show. I didn't think that it would be so soon. I was like, it probably won't be until the following year, once these other 2 student directors have graduated and they need someone else. Like, eventually, once I've prepared a little more, I'll direct a night show. Nope, thrown right into it. And that's pretty much how all of the stuff that I learned how to do in live production went. Like, I did a role before I thought I was ready and was stressed about it, and then it went fine, and I was like, okay, I challenged myself and I was productive. So it's a life lesson for you. I think the next thing I directed was this sports journalism show that I mentioned that we filmed on Fridays, the Locker Room or newscasts. I started directing some of those, and those are live to tape again, so that's not like a live broadcast. So if you need to redo some stuff, you can, but it's mostly like it's talking heads sitting at desks and then occasionally pulling up maybe a clip of some sports something or other, so it's not too bad. So I directed some of those that semester as well. Then we move into Studio 3, which was the spring semester of 2025. And Studio 3 has never been offered before. It's never run before. So myself and the 7 other students that took it, we were very, very lucky that they were able to coordinate it because there was enough of us and we were able to all work it out in our schedules to take it, that we took a Studio 3. So we were literally the first ever Studio 3 class, and it was amazing. We got so many opportunities for experience from that class. So, and it really teaches you about teamwork and communication for sure, both Studio 2 and Studio 3 really. Anyway, so that semester I directed more of the night show. I alternated with one of the other students that, like I mentioned, one of the seniors that directed sometimes. I alternated tapings with her. And then I think it was that semester. Yeah, it was that semester that I signed my first NDA. If you sign one of those, for anyone that's not familiar, it's something that you have to sign where it's saying that you are not going to leak any information. You're not going to, say anything about whatever it is to anybody. And if you do, if you break that contract, so you get in serious trouble, like legal trouble even. So I signed my first NDA because we had a very special guest on the night show. So the night show was going to be ending. Danny Cashman, the host, it was, I guess, getting to be too much for him after all this time, because it wasn't like it was his main job either. So he was going to be ending the show, and eventually I guess he wrote a letter to the person that he really, really wanted as a guest and someone that he really, really looked up to. And it was just a shot in the dark type, they probably won't come on the show. Well, it ended up getting worked out that this person came on the show, and it was a major deal. And so we were given kind of a few little hints beforehand, but nobody was told who it was going to be. We didn't find out until, well, us students didn't find out until that morning when we were gathered for a big meeting, and all the best people were like hand selected to work this thing. I was selected as the front and center camera operator. And so anyways, we find out that it's David Letterman. And for anyone that doesn't know who David Letterman is, he used to have his own talk show and be a host, and he's kind of like the father of talk shows to some people. And yeah, he's just iconic. He's an older guy that he also has My Next Guest Needs No Introduction, which is a series on Netflix. And he's incredibly nice, and he's just very, very high profile, like the type of person that, kind of flies in on his private jet and like to Bangor, Maine, of all places, like this small little town that nobody's heard of unless you're from Maine. So yeah, he agreed and he came on the night show, and it was like the audience was absolutely packed. It was an incredible special occasion thing. Like, you were only allowed backstage with a backstage pass. It was all this stuff. It was very, very high stakes and high profile, and everyone was like stressed to the max because, hello, David Letterman is here. Like, that's crazy. So that was insane to be a camera operator for that. The girl, student director, senior, she actually ended up directing it, which is so insane to think about, the fact that we as students got to work on a talk show with David Letterman. Like, that's insane. And we couldn't say anything. Like, we couldn't tell anyone because it was supposed to be a surprise for the audience too. So it was like, whoa, this is so serious. This is crazy. But anyway, that's not really about directing, but I just had to mention it because it's insane. So anyway, this semester I was going to be directing the sports journalism Friday afternoon tapings again. And some of those sports students, they had an idea that they wanted to implement where there was a couple of shows that aired on, I think it was ESPN, maybe, I'm not sure exactly, don't quote me on that, but kind of sport debate type shows, like fun little sports related shows, but they wanted to change up the format from what they had been doing. So I kind of worked with them and with one of my instructors and with their instructor to put together these two shows. One was called The Starting Five and one was called Shot Clock. And they were actually really fun because they were these fun debate shows, and it got really heated because they're all passionate about sports. And I had a lot of fun directing those, and it was very, very low stakes. I mean, it was literally just a portfolio builder for them. So it was so much fun directing those for another 4 Fridays that semester. I also directed my first lacrosse broadcast. That was interesting because I had never watched a full lacrosse game before until I was preparing to direct this. And we actually were supposed to have two, like a men's and then a women's back-to-back days, but a snowstorm kind of ruined our plans. So we only ended up doing one, which I actually was totally fine with because the rules are different between men's and women's. So it was like two different things I would have had to learn. So I kind of had to get an overall idea for the flow of a lacrosse game. I was watching other broadcasts. It's interesting and it's difficult because sometimes it's hard to figure out where the ball is because it's a small ball that they're holding in like nets on the end of a stick and running around. Like, everyone's holding a stick, and sometimes it's hard to know where it is unless you have a trained eye for it, and are very familiar with the sport. So anyway, that was interesting. But, it gave me experience directing sports, directing something that I was less familiar with, because that was live. Anytime we do sports, it's 100% live and it's less predictable. Like when we do something like a talk show or, it's a more controlled setting. But sports, it's like whatever happens on the field or on the court, you just need to make sure that you have cameras showing it and that you're showing it to the people at home that can't see what you're seeing. Like, you just need to cover it. You just need to make sure. And so it's kind of more stressful in that sense. Like it's just, this is live. This is fast paced. You need to be reactive to what's happening. You can't like predict and plan as much as you would like to. So yeah, lacrosse was interesting. I've also directed some distinguished speaker series, which is basically the dean of the School of Business at our college. She interviews, I guess, these people that come in. Sometimes it's like an author, sometimes it's some scientific researcher, like these people, maybe it's a CEO of a business, and the point is to help students like learn, because there's a Q&A at the end and whatnot. So it's really not the most exciting thing to direct, to be honest. It's literally just an interview, two people sitting in chairs, and then that it's not usually a topic I'm interested in, and it's a whole hour long, but whatever, it's experience. So it is what it is. And then since the night show ended, they were trying to figure out what to replace it with, because it's such a valuable experience for video and audio students to get to work something like that. So they started the night show performance series with one of our NESCOM staff members as the host. And so basically it's kind of a similar thing, but they obviously changed up the set design. And then since we have a TV studio in the NESCOM building, we interview the guests there in that studio, and then they perform down at the Gracie Theater. And it's just musical guests. And we tape 2 shows a night, and we do that 3 times a semester. And so you basically have four bands or artists that come in, 2 for each show. And, while one is sound checking down at the Gracie, the other one is being interviewed up at the studio. And then, the one does their performance, and then they go up to be interviewed while the second band is sound checking, and it kind of just goes like that. But those days are kind of a marathon to direct, because we start actually filming as early as like 3 p.m. when we film some of the wraparounds on the side of the host being like, welcome to the show, blah, blah, blah. We film all of those before starting at 3, and then we have a quick dinner break at like 3:30 for pizza. And then we're filming again all the way until as late as 10 p.m. or after, depending on how efficient. Lately, we've been getting out sooner because we've streamlined the process, but that's a lot of stuff to be just directing almost nonstop. That whole time is crazy. So it's kind of a marathon, but I got to be very heavily involved in the startup of that as part of my independent studies. So that was really cool to I was given a lot of creative input and creative responsibility, and especially when we were setting up and had a lot of things to figure out, I was given a lot of responsibility, and that was, I think, really good for me just as an experience. So night show performance series, I directed all of that fall semester, and then I also directed the Shot Clock and Starting 5 sports journalism tapings again, and again had so much fun with those. And then there's also Overdrive. Overdrive had so much potential to go so much better than I feel that it did. But you know what? You live and you learn. It was an experience, not one that I wish to repeat, but it was an experience. Basically, it's this tradition that they've been doing for years where it's a concert and it's entirely student produced. So there's a team of about 4 students. For audio, there's an audio, like overall event lead. And then there's a music coordinator, and then there's a student that does like the marketing and graphic design, and then there's a student that's the video event lead. And so I was the video event lead for that, and it's something that you're hand selected by the instructors, and you're asked, like I was asked the semester before, and I had worked it the year before as a camera operator. So I kind of figured, I was like, not that I'm going to seek it out, but I already know I'm probably going to be asked because of the people that are still here. Like, I'm the most capable in that position and it makes the most sense. So I already knew I was going to be asked. And so I agreed to it, but I was like, I don't know if I really want to, but whatever. Like, it's a good experience. So I did it, but there's so much prep because, you have really only a few months once the semester starts to actually get ready and prepare for the concert. So, I mean, I did have a meeting over the summer about it. And then, we had a lot of decisions to make regarding, do we want to live stream it this year? Do we want to just film it in smaller segments and upload it this year? Like, what type of format do we want to do? And then me as the director, I'm responsible for the look of the show, and I have to recruit camera operators, and obviously I want the best camera operators. And so I was in production meetings with those other couple students, every week, every 2 weeks for those months leading up to it. And I just had so much prep to do because I had to create a stage plot of where I wanted my cameras and figure out a bunch of that stuff. And the hardest part was recruiting camera operators because this is not a paid event. It's just completely volunteer, and it's also not like required for anybody's class. And there's a higher proportion of video students that are more interested in narrative film and not in live broadcasting. So to find people that are willing and available, and I need commitment far enough out because we order t-shirts for everyone and do all of this stuff. And so it was so impossible to find camera operators because a lot of the best students were in workshop, which was basically their capstone class, and they were doing a short film. And so they couldn't commit to it because that was like an overflow film day. And there was other people that had to work and couldn't get time off work. And it was just literally so impossible. I was having so many mental breakdowns about it, just trying to find people. And so I barely managed to actually crew the thing. And the people that I did have were, some were audio students, some were like first time or second time, like barely experienced. Basically, I had a very green camera crew. And I was already nervous about that because it's really hard to direct when you have such a green camera crew. And the style of music that these bands are like heavy metal or just rock or like really intense and really fast paced and really all over the stage. So it's already hard enough. Anyway, I was doing that. I ended up having to do other things that I shouldn't have had to do. Like I had to set up the switcher board for the technical director, and I ended up doing a bunch of the graphics stuff because I worked with the graphic designer, and so I created all of the graphic loops and everything that we were going to put on the screen, all of that stuff, all of the lower thirds with the song titles. I created all of those, and I'm not a graphics person. It is one of my least favorite areas to do when it comes to live broadcasting. So that was not the most enjoyable part for me. And it was just so stressful doing that on top of all of my other classes and schoolwork and events. And anyway, I won't say it went poorly, but it went fine. And to other people, it went fine. But to me, it was like, I don't even know if I would want to include this in my portfolio because I just feel like I could have done so much better directing the thing, but the handicap was the camera operators, like really and truly. And also the cool thing about that event though is that none of the staff or like faculty other than the one audio instructor, no one else is there because it's on a Saturday and it's an entirely student run thing. So I also had to learn like some of the IT engineering stuff about how to record all of this stuff, how to, do certain things. So I had to meet with them ahead of time as well. And so it's, we're in this millions of dollars mobile production truck, just a couple students directing this whole show, like no supervision. That's insane. That's actually insane to think about. So anyway, it was a really good experience to have preparing for an event like that. I just wish it would have gone better because I stressed over it so much and I prepared so much. And I just feel like the final footage does not reflect at all the amount of effort that I put into it. So that's kind of unfortunate, but you know what? It happens, I guess. But yeah, that semester I was just doing an independent study. So I call it Studio 4, but I mean, it was just an independent study. And then this semester is my last semester and I'm at home because all I had left was 2 classes and they were both online. But I still go up for broadcasts and I directed basketball for the first time this semester. Normally, I produce basketball, and I did for the very first game of the semester, but then I directed the second doubleheader, which is men's and women's game, and then I also directed the championship, I think it was semifinals, which unfortunately our teams did not win, but that's okay. It was really a cool experience to direct basketball. I don't know why I put it off so long. I didn't think that I was capable for some reason, and then I did it, and I was like, that's actually so much easier than I thought. Like, I don't know. I feel that it's an easier sport to direct because it's not to say that it's predictable, but the flow of it is like really easy to get a hold of. And I'm more familiar with the sport now because I'm in pep band. I've been at the basketball games a lot. I've produced a lot of basketball games. The challenge with directing the basketball games was partly lack of experienced camera operators. I mean, we had a few, but the rest of them weren't, or I had to throw an audio student on camera that was just supposed to be a grip, like wrangling cable for someone, because I think someone didn't show up, or I don't know, something. So it was hard doing it with inexperienced camera operators, because in a live sports event, you can't always predict what's going to happen. You need your camera operators to just be reactive and get you those shots, because by the time you see it on maybe like a wider camera that something's happening and then call for it and they get the shot, it's over. So that's challenging. The other challenging part was that I essentially had to direct and produce, because, well, the first one that I directed, it was the Studio 2 class that was supposed to be filling some of the other roles, and their producer was not familiar with basketball at all and had never produced before either. And so I met with him extensively and gave him lots and lots of, resources and help to prepare him so that he knew what to do. And also made it very clear, like, reach out with any questions. Like, I literally gave him templates and previous examples of rundowns that had all the stuff in it and examples of my info documents. And I gave him a whole checklist of leading up to the game and then day of before the game and then during the game, like, here's all your responsibilities, all of that stuff, right? Had a whole conversation, did all this prep with him, and then didn't hear anything at all the next week. So I was like, oh, okay, he's probably got it under control, or he's reached out and is talking to the few other people I told him to ask questions to. We get to day of, and he had nothing planned for halftime. He didn't have really anything for, like, basically all the stuff that I had talked about of this is what you need to do. None of that really was done. Like, we didn't even have rundowns because somewhere along the line he thought that was someone else's job and nobody actually asked anybody and like tried to communicate and figure it out. And so even though I had given him a checklist and on that checklist it said that that was his responsibility, so I don't know, that whole situation just really frustrated me. And so here I am trying to get ready to direct for the first time a basketball game, but also now having to stress about, okay, now I need to figure out something to put into halftime and figure out all this other stuff. And then, it was just kind of a nightmare. And then we also use a sideline talent, like sideline reporter. And usually coming back from commercial breaks, we'll use them for stuff. And usually as the producer, I help create some of those sideline segments and whatnot. We didn't have any sideline segments prepared. And the particular student that was the reporter, was also someone that does not have good work ethic. And it was who we had available, but it wasn't good. So they were going to need to be line fed everything and didn't have it. So anyway, it was kind of a really stressful disaster. I basically had to try and produce the game on the fly while also directing it for the first time, while also working with first time camera operators. And this is actually streamed live. And it was such a day. It was a day, but you know what? Gave me experience. So luckily the next weekend it was a little better because I actually did all of the producer prep as well as the director prep. And then during the game, it was one of my instructors that was doing graphics and producing, but I still kind of had to direct and produce the game because, like, I don't know, he wasn't taking the initiative like I usually do when I'm the producer to actually say what's coming up next and make everything very clear. So I kept having to ask, like, what did I put for this? What did I put for this? Like, I don't know. It was like I still had to be thinking about that. So I just want a chance to direct basketball and have someone that's like my level of producer back there as my producer, because that would be great. That would be wonderful. I just need me to produce and me to direct, but be two separate people. if that makes sense. But anyway, whatever. I'm just glad that I got to have a second chance to direct it. Yeah, this semester I've also been directing the night show performance series, sometimes working with good camera operators, sometimes not. Very big frustration with people that don't give any effort whatsoever, and it's like I'm talking to just the air and nobody's listening. Like, that can be very frustrating. So, but I got compliments from other instructors and other people that, like, I guess apparently it seems like I always keep my cool and I'm very like calm and collected and whatever. So I guess that's good that it appears that way. I try. And then the most recent thing that I directed for the first time was D&D, Dungeons and Dragons. They started this semester a new, it's not live streamed, it could be, but it's live to tape, but a new thing that's, a couple hours, and it's this whole campaign, and they have all these 3D printed little set pieces and the special table and all the dice and they're the characters, and they do this whole campaign, and we have lights and music and some cool little graphics and things. I'm not like super familiar with D&D. I don't play it. I don't really fully understand the whole thing, but I understand the general concept. And so I ended up directing the second half of it, and I will direct again the full thing of it when there's one more taping coming up. So that was an interesting thing to kind of try something new again. It's always good to try new things, but this whole journey of directing, it's given me a lot of experience and a lot of variety of experience as well. So it's been good because it's actually stuff that I can put on my resume already as, hey, I have, this many years of actual experience already. And speaking of resumes, I want to wrap this up by just talking about the future and my future plans. Do I want to direct in the future? The answer is I don't know. I don't know. Right now I'm at a stage where I'm trying to figure out what I want to do with my degree, where I want to end up, what role specifically I might be interested in. There's just a lot to consider. And the thing is, directing, producing, some of those roles that I've been doing are not necessarily entry-level roles in the actual big industry. You have to kind of work your way up to them, and it can take quite a while. And so I don't know if that's something I want to pursue or not, because it's also very stressful and it's a lot of responsibility and it's a big time and schedule commitment. And do I think I would be capable? Yes, I do. But I don't know if that's what I want. But I am going to miss it. Like, I do really enjoy doing that stuff. So I don't know. I don't know. I don't think it's something that I'm going to pursue immediately. But if I eventually am able to work my way back to a role like that, then sure. I think I would go for it. Ideally, I think I kind of want to work in the sports industry, live sports, but I'm open to other options as well. I think I'm trying to just keep all my options open right now and not have a narrow vision. So yeah, do I want to direct in the future? It would be great if the experience came up or the opportunity came up, but I don't know if I want that kind of stress or not. I mean, any job is going to be stressful in different ways, especially when you're working in the live broadcast industry. So I don't know, that remains to be seen. I guess maybe someday you might see my name in the credits of some broadcast that I may direct. I could direct at a local news station, but I don't really want to start out in news. I don't want to work in news at all. I mean, a lot of people start out in news in this industry, but I really want to avoid that if I can. So we'll see. Stay tuned, because I'm sure that as I continue to do this podcast, I'll have updates here and there about, hey, this is what I actually am now doing for a career. So yeah, stay tuned. But anyway, sorry this was such a long episode. I just had so much to talk about, but it's definitely been a journey for sure. And I'm really grateful for the people that have kind of been by my side to help guide me through my directing journey and support me and push me into trying new things and getting out of my comfort zone, because, there are some things that I wouldn't have probably tried directing if it wasn't for other people and like my instructors pushing and saying, you'll be fine. Like, you'll be fine at it. You can handle it, just try it. So I'm very grateful also for, all of the constructive feedback that I get and just the positive feedback as well. So it's been incredible. And I hope you guys enjoyed. So Hope you're having a great day. Hope you have a great week or weekend or whenever you're listening to this, and just stay tuned for the next episode. Bye.